What's up, y'all? I'm Jackson Fordyce.
I'm Josiah Simons.
Welcome back to the Pitch Perfect podcast. I'm here with Danelle Dayan, principal at Battery Ventures, and Bob Van Lout, founder and CEO of Weaviate. Gentlemen, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So, in all transparency, we are media guys. We do not know a lot about AI, coding, deep AI at least. And so I don't want to pretend like something we're not. So This conversation is going to be more just like getting to know you guys as people, getting to know the relationship between the founder and the funder. We can absolutely get into the weeds of AI if you guys want to talk about that. We're not going to probably
vector
be able
databases, everything.
Yeah, vector database. We probably won't be able to follow along the way that most people in the VC world can. So that doesn't necessarily mean our audience can't, though. So just letting you guys know, we'll be asking more questions about just who you are as people and the relationship and kind of how you got here today. So with that, a quick intro, if you guys just want to tell us about what Weaviate is, what Battery does, and then I want to ask about like when y'all first met.
You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. We've been around for 40 years. We're investing out of our 14th fund. And we tend to be very domain-centric and thematic in our approach to investing. So I sit on the infrastructure side, focused on developer tools, data platforms, ML/AI infrastructure, and security. Mostly doing Series A's and Series B's, and was fortunate enough to work with Bob early on in their journey.
Yeah. So I'm Bob. I'm one of the co-founders of Weaviate. So we create AI infrastructure, and then specifically the database part. So it's called a vector database. And basically, based on what you said in your intro, just to keep it very simple.
Yes, please.
If you get like if a new category emerges, like what we see now with AI, you need infrastructure for that, right? So you need people or companies and people help you to build whatever you want to build in that category, right? So we're sitting in that database part. And for me, the journey, not with Weaviate, but working with the vectors, the vector embedding started around 10 years. Next year is going to be 10 years ago. It was obscure for a very long time. I always, with the team, when our like DevRel and DevGrowth theme shows, when they show up, like, 500 people joined.
Yeah.
I remember the first event I organized in New York, 0 people showed up. So there was and this is before that it was called AI and that kind of stuff, right? It was even before COVID. But but all of a sudden we start to see that how people started to adopt this technology. Then all of a sudden machine learning became AI, and then in the slipstream of that, we needed all that infrastructure, and that is that's what we do. And now this is the 5th year that I'm at it. Yeah.
Can you tell us that story of the New York event that no one showed up to?
Yeah, I can certainly tell you about that. So I still remember it was like. So I forgot what the name was, but you had like this website. It probably still exists where you can rent these spaces, right? So I rented this space at like an art gallery. And there were like all these people, looking at art and drinking wine and stuff. And I was like, and I set everything up. And I, and I had a presentation on screen. And, you did the thing that's like buying pizza and beer.
Yeah.
So I sit there and just a couple of people sign up through meetup.com. And then they just didn't show up. So I had to, it was like a lot of beer. So it's like, I'm managed. But no, but that's kind of on the journey, because you somehow need to figure out, it's like, how do you make people, interested in what you do, right? And that was like but that was part of it. But the nice thing was that I just so I ate half a pizza, drank a couple of beers, I put them in front of the table, took a picture of the screen where you saw the Weaviate presentation, and I believe you saw the Brooklyn Bridge, put it on social media, said like, the first meetup in New York went great.
Yeah. So, that's on the outside looking.
Exactly.
It was a huge success.
Yeah. So no, but that's a true story. So and now it's like, now I have the opposite experience. So I was the other day, actually was organized a Weaviate hack night at the GitHub offices, and it's just hundreds of people there, and I'm like, what are these people doing here? And it's like so. And now I'm experiencing the other side of it, which is pretty exciting. But there's also, the journey's kind of cool, though, I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did y'all meet?
So, I mean, we reached out to Bob cold, I believe, but we also have a few folks in our network that were involved with Bob and Weaviate early on, that also got connected to us. So there were a few different nodes that got us connected, and we had been following the company from the early days when they were still called semi-technology, and they were an open source project. So we were tracking the GitHub repository and sort of like developer community adoption for a while before we got involved. Maybe just jumping back into what we saw in the market that got us interested. So at Battery, we've invested across sort of the various cycles of technology innovation and tech cycles, everything from Netezza, which was an on-prem data lake, to Databricks, which is your data lake and cloud data warehouse at this point. And through every sort of cycle and evolution, we were drawn to the fact that when you went on-prem, you needed a very specific system to handle the type of on-prem data. When you went to mobile, you also needed a different type of system and database to store that type of data, to retrieve it in real time and with less latency. And when we saw the shift to AI, we realized all of these models were interacting and interfacing with vectors and vector embeddings, which is a string of numbers, which is not anything like your traditional relational databases or unstructured data. And so we came back to the same thesis, which is there's a new data type emerging, and there's likely going to be a new database or at least data infrastructure that's going to need to support this type of data, this data type. And that led us into exploring the broader vector database space. And we through the relationships and outreach, we got connected to Bob. We loved the open source story behind it. The developer love, but then also talking to him, the customer centricity and enterprise focus that I think has been a through line sort of from the early journeys. And, ultimately that's what got us excited to get involved.
What did that outreach look like to you, Bob? Was it an email? Did you meet Danelle beforehand? Were you convinced early on, or did it take some time to say that yes to having Battery write a check to y'all?
So, I mean, so at some point I started to get a lot of emails. Right? AI is a thing, right? So, and there's a short list of firms if they reach out, right? So, that's interesting by default, right? So it's like, and Battery is certainly one of those. And the reason why that was the case for, I would also say for me personally and my co-founder, not even for the company, but for the two of us, like, if you see the types of companies that Battery has supported in the past, right, and how they've done that, that was of interest to us, right?
It made sense to y'all.
Yeah, and I understand that every founder has everybody has their own way how they want to build a company, but what we believe that Battery could bring to the table, and it's amazing because we work with that guy over there, which is amazing, and that's actually happening, right? So, and that's more because in the end, yes, we open source is very important. Yes, it's very much the open source developer folks, community folks, those kind of things, tremendously important. But we're just also building. We also want to build like a huge business, right? So, and then mixing that all together, getting the help also based on experience that these guys have. So that's kind of how that went. So it was like this is kind of a long-winded answer to say, like, it's a little bit different depending on the type of firm that reaches out. Because if Danelle reaches out to me, then he brings that whole baggage of Battery. You see what I'm trying to say? So that's different.
So did it feel more like Battery was pitching Weaviate than the opposite?
I like to think that.
Do you think the other way?
Can we roll with that?
Yeah. In this market, we are price takers. So in many cases, we are the ones pitching and trying to earn the right to partner up with companies like Weaviate and others, which makes our job fun and crazy. And yeah.
How did you beat the competition? How did you guys make that perfect pitch?
So I think domain expertise is a big part of it, and something we lean heavily into. The fact that myself and a few others on the team are solely focused on infrastructure specifically, I think gives us the depth required to resonate and connect with founders like Bob. I would say on top of that, some of the things that Bob mentioned, we work closely with a few operating partners that I think gives us superpowers. So one in particular that was really relevant for the Weaviate story is Max Shearson. He was one of the early CEOs of MongoDB. Took the company to close to 100 million of ARR before transitioning out and still being involved in the company. Before MongoDB, he was at MarkLogic. Before MarkLogic, he was with Oracle, right? So he had seen what it takes to build a database from the earliest days of the software and computing revolution through the cloud and through AI. And I think having him on our team and on our side, working closely with Bob, helping Bob see around the corners, especially early on in terms of hiring, how do you hire the right team? How do you surround yourself with the right management folks? What are the things you should be aware of in transitioning from open source to commercial? All of those questions, I think were, helped having someone like Max on our side.
Yeah. Bob, what about the pitch stood out to you that you said, battery's the right choice for us?
Because there's probably a bunch of people, like you said, in your inbox of these, great firms, and they do great work. Yeah, I guess what was it?
Yeah. So so everything Danielle just said is true. So let me give you a completely different answer as well, and that's people, right? So I'm going to assume that you have also other founders or sub-founders watch this. It's it's a long journey, and you need to get along with the people that you're going to work with, right? Besides all the great things that Danielle just mentioned. So for me, it was from day one, it was super important. It was if I'm going to go in this journey, not even with Battery, but just in general, it's we just want to work with great people that you want to pick up the phone if you have a problem or a thing, and that I can just share this. These are good people. They're going to help me, because it's you in the end, you accumulate a lot of people around your company, and you want that to be a pleasant crowd. So for me, the first thing when I talk to, listen, I sometimes go to firms and I talk to people and they're this is a very fancy place, but no, thank you. Right. And that was the exact opposite, because do you remember that we actually had the first
What are
conversation?
you trying to say?
It's not a fancy
place,
right?
We might not have the fanciest office. That's true.
Well,
that's beautiful.
We have good views.
The views are
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, I know that are fancier, but no. I'm joking. No, but that's a good thing, right? So wasn't it Warren Buffett who said if the fancier the office, the more you should look in the behind the corners and see what's happening? He has I'm paraphrasing, but he has some kind of saying like that, right? So you just meet a couple of great people. We met in the office right there. Just beautiful view though, but it comes for free. So we met. So we had a great conversation. I know. So what we also specifically were looking for was starting to grow out the whole go-to-market and those kind of things, that type of expertise. And it was very clear that Battery was bringing that. So but that's what I want to add to that as well. So everything Danielle said is true, but really the people element is really important for me as well, because I spend a lot of time on this stuff, and then I prefer to do that with people I like to work with.
What's a personality trait that you saw in Danielle in that meeting that really drove you to saying yes to Battery?
So I hope you don't mind me saying, but he's a little bit blue, so it's very numbers driven, that kind of stuff. I'm not that good at that kind of way of thinking, right? So and that I immediately knew that if we're going to work together, then I'm going to get a lot of value from that, because it's and now also the people at Weaviate that are focusing on that kind of stuff, Patrick said, you work a lot with them, and that is fantastic, right? So that is that added value. So you just meet nice, down to earth people that add that type of value, and you go this is fantastic. There's a huge opportunity to help each other. So that's kind of how that was born. And that was literally in the office right there. Yeah.
What would you say to a founder watching this who's entering that stage where they're talking to VCs, they're trying to figure out who they can trust and who maybe they can't? What is it about Battery? What is it about those people who you just get that sense of? I know sometimes it can be just a sense. It's not something that you can necessarily tell someone this is what you can look out for. But is there anything practical that if someone is looking for funding, they can look out for in those conversations to say, oh, these are the right people and maybe these are the wrong people?
Yeah, so I've learned something more in general. So this is more in general if we work, but that also goes for working with VCs. If you meet somebody, right, and you take the time to prepare something or to show something, And, and people have trouble with words such as please, thank you, and sorry, then you know that maybe they should go shop somewhere else.
Just common courtesy.
Yes.
Pleasant, polite
yes.
people.
Yes. Come in. Do you want to have a cup of coffee? Yeah, sure. Thank you. And, and then you sit down, you have a conversation, you feel like you can open up a little bit to share things. And that is and that I don't know how you see that, but I think it's 5 minutes, maybe even less. And then you know it. Right? So you know it.
So your mom raised you right.
Yeah, exactly.
Job,
exactly. No, just double clicking on that. I think, there's a trust element, which I think is important, but there's also a values alignment between founders and investors that I think is also really important, mainly because these journeys are so long. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be twists and turns, there's going to be challenges. But as long as you are aligned on the right values, on what's important to the business, on the duration that it's going to take to actually see the success through, I think that actually is really what builds a lot of the foundation for founder investor relationships. So while Bob is true that I am very numbers driven, I do like seeing as much data as possible. It doesn't distract me from the fact that we're aligned on this journey together, that it's going to take time, that there's going to be ups and downs. It's more so that we can make informed decisions, or I can use the data to show Bob certain things that might not be obvious in any of the conversations that we're having. So I think the trust piece is definitely an important aspect to it, but I think getting aligned on, are we on this journey together? Do we believe on what the mission is I think probably more important in the long term.
So y'all's pitches align and you come together and you make a deal. What does Weaviate then use that funding for the most part, that kind of allowed the growth that you've seen in these last couple of years?
You mean in general, or related to specifically with battery?
In general.
Yeah, in general. Yeah. What does Weaviate use the funding for?
Yeah. So we were just at the same month that we raised, we launched our commercial offering. That was the exact same month.
Wow.
So which was a little bit by coincidence, but that was what was happening. And so then kind of what you're gonna do with it is kind of speaks for itself, right? So what you want is that you need to figure out how you bring together everything that you do, like from a growth perspective, so content wise, from a marketing perspective, and those kind of things. It's very important that our first big milestone by the end of the year was we had like 0 salespeople, right? We were just going at it, and people were signing up and that kind of stuff. But then we also started to get like enterprises reaching out, etc. And I needed help to really, on a professional and serious way, scale up the whole go-to-market machine, because I couldn't do that myself anymore. I did not have specific expertise. I didn't have And then what's nice, so for example, collaboration, you go like, okay, we need to hire these people, we need to find these people, these guys in, like, who can we reach out to, who can we work with? Then the battery team starts to, be involved in finding people, back channeling people, seeing who's aligned, what we need, and that kind of stuff. So that's what you are basically what we're using the money for right now. So to basically go to that next stage. I really believe in open source companies. You have it's kind of like a pre-growth / pre-market fit stage versus a post. And the moment they invested, that was the time that we were post, and then we had to now go like, okay, now the next step in a journey, that's the whole, the go-to-market machine. And that's what we use it for, and what we use the help for.
Yeah. I'll double click on that. So when we were getting involved, we obviously saw the open source traction, growing significantly and accelerating. And it just felt like the company was kind of bursting through its seams. And the second the round closed, the money got wired, it was like, Bob, hire the right functional people in place, and let's start to get a team around you that can scale and can really grow the business. And Bob has a great network. And so his instinct was like, okay, I'm going to go tap into my network and find out who are the best marketers and who are the best, salespeople, who are the best product leaders. And we were like, no, you have money now. Hire a search firm. Like, time is of the essence. Let's get the people in place sooner rather than later. And the faster that you can hire the right people, the faster you can start to see that acceleration through in some of those functions.
How did you take that advice? Was that received well?
Yeah, no, sure. So this is also as a founder. So it's like you need to learn how to efficiently use the funds, right? So that's uh, a little bit of a cheesy example, but it makes my point. So that those early days, what I mentioned about that in New York, right?
Yeah.
Then you just arrive and you take the subway, right? So that's how you go. Now I don't do that anymore.
Well, what do you do now?
So now I just
Uber Black.
Yeah, but the thing is, it saves me a lot of time, right? So it's just more, it's better use of my time, basically. And so now fast forward a couple of years. So what Daniel just says, is like, because for me the company culture is extremely important. They go, yeah, so we want to find the right person, but then before you know it, time's ticking, right? Yeah. Like, why just get like a great firm on board to help you with that, and they can help with that. So that's an example, but that's just one example. There's like many ways how they've helped, right? So, and that's because I think maybe you've seen there's like, yes, there's something new happening in AI, but there are also a lot of patterns from the past, right? So it's like, it's like not 100% new. It's like, I don't know, 50% new, and the other 50% is just, e.g., hiring. It's just that's just pattern matching from the past, right? So it's and that's where where you get a lot of help.
One of the things that I like to do early on, and I stole this from another seasoned investor, is to lean into this like notion of show not tell. And in instances like this, right, where it's like, Bob, you need to accelerate in this front. Hiring is a core, skill that you need to learn, and capability for the firm to grow. You're going to be if you go out through your network, you're going to meet, one great person a week, maybe, or every 2 weeks, depending on who you can get to and reach out to, and what have you, right? If you use a search firm in this instance, you're going to meet 5 people in like 3 days, right, for the next 4 weeks. And you're going to quickly learn, and the cycle of feedback of what great really looks like, or what is really important to you in that role that you're looking for, just accelerates at a different pace. And it's some of those things early on where I think it's really important to to sort of guide the teams that you're working with. And now Bob will go out and find people on his own, because he already gone through that cycle, and he's like, I know this is what I'm looking for, and I've done this in the past 2 roles that I hired for, right? And now the board and the team and the people around him all trust him, and around how that all comes together, right? But early on, it's that cycle of feedback and what great really looks like that I think is super important. And having the capital to invest in some of those initiatives, I think is great uses of venture money.
Hey, y'all. Do you enjoy listening to podcasts? Since you're listening to one right now, I'm going to assume you do. And if you enjoy podcasts, you need to download the Overlap app. We all love long-form podcast conversations, but who has the time to always stay up to date with 3-hour-long interviews? Overlap solves that problem for you by providing only the best podcast moments. The app's AI assistant curates playlists of personalized podcast clips that are tailored to your interests and favorite creators, like us. Just prompt it with any topic and instantly get a playlist of the best short-form moments. So jump over to the App Store now, like right now, and download Overlap. You can also find a link to download below in our description. It's free and we highly recommend it. The app actually does recommend great content, and I learn something new every day from my playlists. Thanks so much to Overlap for sponsoring this episode.
Danelle, you've been at Battery for several years now. I'm curious if you can recall a low point in your career and how that's formed and shaped you as an investor.
Yeah, that's a great question. Like in many ways, I think one of the virtues and values of Battery is we've been consistent probably for the last 40 years in terms of what we look for, the teams we like to partner with, the companies we typically invest in, right? So the inputs of our investment process have been consistent across cycles, across market cycles, across technology cycles, across changes in the venture landscape. And I think that learning and that foundation is really important. That said, like the outside factors that have impacted the venture market over the last couple of years just feels like whiplash, right? 2020, 2021, the whole COVID sort of pulled forward, not just in terms of fundraising and the cycles of fundraising, but the amount of capital that came into the industry was just very hard to navigate, especially early on, and building out your track record and things like that. Fast forward to today, right? You see that same type of activity happening around AI and all the AI companies. And one of the longtime partners at Battery said every few years there's this outside influence and force that is put upon the industry that feels like it's existential, right? A couple of years ago, it was SoftBank raising their Vision Fund, right, which was like, this thing is going to really change how venture is done at scale. Then we went through, the hype era of very fast fundraisers, and now we're in the AI hype. And so I think the low points are, trying to think through whether we need to shift our strategy to meet the market where it is, or stay focused on, what has worked for the last 40 years. And I think it's that balance of, how do you adapt to the reality, the game on the field, while still being true to the fundamentals that have, allowed the firm to be consistent for this long.
But for you, you're coming up as a new investor. You want to make a name for yourself and, make great bets. And you see a lot of changes in the venture space. Was it tough for you just to know what to believe, what to latch onto, who to trust in this industry? Or was there something more difficult that happened during that time?
No, I think it comes down to, one, the people you want to work with, your gut instinct, and really just like honing in that like judgment factor. Everyone will say capital is a commodity. In many cases, a lot of the firms, if you really look at it from the outside in, have all the same capabilities and resources. Everyone has a BD function. Everyone has a talent team. Everyone can help with hiring. Everyone has very smart investors around the table. And so, if you think of it that way, ultimately the things that you can really control are who do you want to work with over the journey of any startup and company. What does your gut say, and how aligned are you to the companies that you're working with? And I think if you can stay true to that, the lows will never be as low as they need to be, and maybe the highs won't be as high, right? But you at least be able to stay consistent, which I think is important for the founders that you're working with.
So Bob, when you guys started hiring at Weaviate after the larger round, what was one? I know it's hard to play favorites, but what was like the one hire that you think has been the most impactful in the positive sense for Weaviate?
Oh boy.
All of his employees are listening right now, hoping they
play favorites
he says
now.
their name.
So can I make that two?
Yeah.
So just one.
Oh, never mind.
So one thing that and for everybody from you, it's I love you all, right? But just to make sure that but let me highlight two. So the one was that early on I invested in hiring a people and culture team, because I knew we need to have people to execute on what we're doing, right? So it's like otherwise, and I am so happy that we did that, because if we look at the people in the company now, right? So we're like just over 80 people now, and people are happy. People are do the job with a smile on their face. It's fantastic to see. So that's Jessie. She did that. She's doing that, and she's doing an amazing job there. And another hire was that I hired a chief of staff, Jenna, and she is also like tremendously helpful, because she's like an operational rock star. And so then I can be a little bit every now and then, don't tell them out, but with my head in the clouds and think about where we want to go.
Be more creative.
She can actually help with like, boots on the ground and execute. So, but so I'm not saying this. I don't want to be cheap, but I could keep going because it's like I'm really, really, really blessed with like an amazing team of people. These are great people. So it's but if I just now, these two now came to mind. So that's so then I'll go for dubs.
It seems like company culture is so important to you. If you had to describe Weaviate's culture in one word, what would that be?
I like to use the word kindness to describe
Kindness.
it. Yes.
How was that established at your company?
Um, I remember that we had the very first company trip. So we are a fully remote company. So we have this annual trip where everybody comes together. And the very first one that we had, that was way before those they invested. So this is way back. We were way smaller. And I was trying to come up with every company trip, I start with like a presentation about like what company, but also where do we want to go? Who are we about that kind of stuff, right? So I was making that very first presentation ever. And one of the things that I found very important was like we worked together, and I find like for lack of a better way of saying it, like the pleasant work environment important, because I think that community sees that, customers see that kind of stuff, right? So I was working on a slide to and I just had a couple of words on there, right? So like happiness, joyfulness, kindness, those kind of words.
Right.
And it was just one slide in the presentation. It was like I had like a gazillion. There was just one. And just because I want to make a point, and I had the slide on. So we were at this company. At that slide, I get to the slide, and I'm just talking over, and I look at the slide, and just something pops into my head right there. So I asked him, it's like, hey, something pops into my head. So it's like, there's one word. So we have happiness, joyfulness, kindness, those kind of words. So the one word stands out. Which one is it? So team goes, are they guessing? And I said, the word that stands out is kindness, because happiness, joyfulness, that kind of thing, that's stuff that you experience. But who knows, right? So it's like, that's you, that's your own experience. But kindness stands out because that's something you can give to somebody else, right? And then during that company event, that word kept coming back. And then when we started to create our company values and that kind of stuff, we said like, that's going to be the word, right? So that's like, if you now go to our website, that is word number one, right? And that sounds easy, but it's actually darn hard, because it's like doing that all the time. And we call that like user centricity, constantly focusing on that. Sometimes hard, right? Sometimes, you might have like a, bad day or what have you. It's hard, but it's so important because we're in a people business. So it's important. So that's the work.
When you were just in your career, growing up, working at whatever businesses you've worked at, has that maybe not been something that's emphasized that you have noticed throughout your career? Of that's something that when it's missing, kindness, the work is worse, people's attitudes are worse, it's not enjoyable, and you get burnt out a lot easier.
Yeah. So I'm in a lucky situation. I never worked for a boss in my one day in my life ever.
Really?
No, I've only had my own businesses. So but I have seen that. But I do think though, is that it's actually also related a little bit to something else. What I think is worse than that lacking is maybe not worse, but like equally problematic is if leadership is not able to define a clear vision and a dot on the horizon. And if you don't do that, then people get confused. And if people get confused, they get like nervous, stressed. If they're nervous and stressed, it's not that easy to be kind to each other. So it's like a downwards, it's a negative spiral downwards, right? So it's all intertwined with each other.
Top-down kindness.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I get, well, any direction kindness, I would say. Yeah.
Danelle, outside of work, of course, what's the most important thing to you in your life?
So I recently got married.
Dude, congrats.
Thank
You just
you.
got engaged.
Yeah, happened in March. And so my wife and the small family that we're starting to build has become a major priority, which is a big shift because for a long time I prioritized work and my professional life first. So that's taken precedent, and that's something I've really enjoyed. The other thing I would say is trying to find balance, and it's not necessarily like balance of work and, personal life and all of that. It's activity, it's like action, it's, going out, doing things, just sort of diversifying some of the things that I'm doing, even though I'm still doing things. So I don't actually think my schedule, my life in any way is balanced. It's like 110% all the time, every day. But, diversifying some of the things that I'm doing in those moments, I think is important.
Bob, what about you outside of work? What's most important to you?
Yeah, so I think it's a kind of similar. So it's like I travel a lot together with my girlfriend. So we do a lot of traveling. I love good restaurants and good hotels. So that's what we do. And it is very work centered, right? But in a good way, right? So we do a lot of stuff together. So as mentioned, the traveling, the working together, and so that's it's a little bit of a boring answer because it's like very. It's I was like, when you asked him the question, I was like, okay, so he's gonna
don't ask
and
me,
I
dude.
could not come up with like a better answer than this. So I feel well, actually, I do have one. So so there's like I had like this childhood dream. I should not say this on a podcast, but I had like this childhood dream. I bought myself an old yellow Hummer H2,
Okay.
which I like to drive around after a very busy day. And I put on a blues record and I drive around in the yellow thing. And that is how I
Put
relax.
on blues music in a Hummer.
Yes, sir.
Have you been in the Hummer with?
I have not yet. I have not had
That's
the
your next
privilege
board
yet.
meeting.
Yeah,
I know,
exactly.
I know. It's like but it's like and it does, it does very well on me and boys around the age of 10. They're like, ooh, in fact, big car.
Loud going down.
Where do you park it?
Yes. So I found a parking garage that exactly fits it because that's not that easy.
What's the clearance on it?
Yeah. So I was where did you were about to say that because I'm Dutch, so I think in meters.
Yes.
I think in meters. So it's like it's 2.2 meters.
Okay.
So it's like I don't know what that translates as.
I drive a Ford F-350, so it's
here you go.
massive too. And so parking in garages is almost non-existent.
Exactly.
And I can't even imagine parking that thing like down here, dude.
But it's like it's just I really enjoyed it, and I just put on some music, and I just drive around that yellow. It's yellow, so it's like you can't miss it either.
I think that's such an interesting look. The Hummer, the blues music, and then just, dude, your fit. Can you explain to us the outfit of what you're wearing today from top to bottom?
Oh, so it's like this is it's almost the same. So this one I don't know. I bought it in Sausalito actually, but the rest is like from a Y3. So that's I'm very much Y3 Adidas here. Uniqlo socks. The
Prada glasses.
Oh yes, the Prada glasses. Yeah. So the
Cartier.
Yes, that's true. So that's well spotted. So yeah. No, I like that kind of stuff, right? So it's like I was last weekend. I was in LA because we've hired somebody there, and I just want to spend some time with him. But then just Sunday morning, I just went out shopping and to the fashion district, and I got myself some nice clothes. So I was like, I like that kind of stuff.
What was your favorite new thing that you bought?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think. The
500 things. I don't know what to.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. It's like I think I literally have more clothing than my girlfriend has. Like, it's like so it's like I bought this really cool these brown pants from Louis Vuitton. They're like really cool.
You got to show some pictures of them later.
Well, yeah. So it's like it's like I don't know why, but it's like how I relax, right? So I like to do that kind of stuff. And so we now have like next week we have like a wedding coming up. So I'm like, okay, what am I gonna wear? So it's like I like that. Yeah.
Danelle, if you were both of y'all actually, if you weren't an investor, you weren't a founder, what would you be doing with your life?
So there's two things that I always go to when asked this question.
You could ask us a lot.
Yeah, it's been asked before.
Okay.
One, and they're both actually very similar, but in different fields. So I'd either want to be a doctor, and specifically like orthopedic surgeon.
Wow.
I love sports. I also like weirdly enjoy looking at like sports injuries, and like I'm not not squirmish
The
around
ones
it.
where like the bones
Yeah,
pop out of people's
totally.
legs.
I will watch all of those
Dude,
videos.
over and over, just watch it.
Before you go to bed at night, that's what you're watching. Your phone.
And or a chef. And I think like, both those things have very similar, attributes to them. But one, I think there's something about kind of like the finesse of surgery and being able to do that and bring people back to like full strength and health and activity, I think is amazing. And I've had my fair share. I've torn both my ACLs. I've broken an ankle, broken my wrist. I've like done it all. And then on the chef side, one, I love like going to great restaurants and good food. But I think the love and creativity that goes into a lot of these dishes for that like millisecond of a moment or experience, I think is pretty amazing.
Real quick, favorite sports team, least favorite sports team, and if you had one restaurant to eat at for the rest of your life in San Francisco, what would that be?
Okay, let's start with restaurant. That's a hard question, but I would go with Cotonia. It's an Italian restaurant, which is it's a sister restaurant of Quince, which is like a 3-star Michelin. But it's actually, very approachable, really good Italian food, and the atmosphere there is amazing. So I used to live nearby there, and would go there for lunch and stuff like that. And it's just a great like SF establishment at this point. Sports teams, I've been in the Bay Area. So I grew up in the Philippines, where basketball is a big thing.
Yeah.
So basketball is like the sport. But I've now been in the Bay Area for the last 12 years. So for all intents and purposes, I've just become like a Bay Area sports fan. So it's Warriors and 49ers.
I got right.
Like Warriors. 49ers, yeah, they're cool.
Bob, for you, if you could be anything else besides a founder of this company.
So I think if I may slightly adjust the question, because if I'm not a founder or I'm employed or unemployed, so that's, that's rough.
Yeah.
No, but if I wouldn't work in tech, then I might want to work like in something like fashion or something. That I would be. I love that kind of business.
Designing?
No, just more the business side,
Okay.
right? So the marketing side, the business side, like how you position that, right? So we were actually earlier today, we were talking about it, like we talked about like Air Jordans and Nike shoes, right? So, and that you go like, you're not selling just a shoe, right? But it's like really that experience. Like if you want to be like Mike, you buy such a shoe, right? So, and I think that also in software, we learn so much from what comes from the fashion industry, how you brand and position a also B2B software product. And what was the other question again?
Oh, that was the only question. What would you want to be if you're in a sports too?
Yeah,
but...
then I would probably do something on the business side in fashion. Sports. I can't answer that question because I know that at soccer you kick a ball and at basketball you throw it. That's kind of where it stops.
That's really it.
So that's it. So I can't answer that question. And restaurant wise, so there's a restaurant in and it's still closed because I think they are. I don't know what's happening, but it's closed for quite some time now. But they're gonna reopen it, which is actually in the Ferry Building, the slanted door, at the Vietnamese place.
Yeah,
and
it's about to open.
Yeah, is it about to open?
Yeah,
I like that
back.
place. I liked that place a lot. So I hope that when they open up again, that is like equally good as it was before. So then I'll go for that.
Great. Well, Bob, Danelle, we really appreciate your time today. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely.